Beneath the blazing sun of Liberty Plaza, the truth was about to explode. Malik Carter had one shot to expose the powerful senator standing at the podium, and he wasn't walking away until every secret was dragged into the light. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because that encourages us to bring you more powerful stories like this. The sun hung high above Liberty Plaza, scorching the marble tiles until they shimmered like heat waves dancing on the pavement. The city's midday heat was unforgiving, turning the open space into a furnace where every breath felt thick, heavy, and suffocating. Yet, not a single reporter dared to leave their post. Not today. Today, Senator Alan Forsyth had called for a press conference. His people had promised it would be an important public announcement. The plaza, usually a place for rest and quiet reflection, had become an arena, a stage for the self-assured politician to bask in the glow of the media spotlight. The press pool shifted restlessly. Fans whirred, papers rustled, and sweat beads formed on the brows of those trying to keep up appearances. The cameras jostled, their lenses catching every angle of the scene. Despite the discomfort, the reporters held their ground. At the center of the attention stood Forsyth, his tall, imposing figure cutting a striking contrast against the aging, sagging American flags that draped from either side of the podium. His silver hair gleamed in the sunlight, untouched by the oppressive heat, and his expensive navy suit held fast against the sweltering air. Forsyth's smile was wide, practiced, and nearly perfect, like the mask of a man used to controlling the narrative. The aides bustled around him, adjusting microphones and offering whispered reminders of key talking points. Forsyth took it all in stride, his gaze sweeping across the crowd of reporters, his eyes sharp with the knowing confidence of someone who had spent years twisting truth into his favor. Among the sea of eager faces, one figure stood apart, unassuming yet distinct. Malik Carter stood several rows back, his presence understated but undeniable. He was tall, with a frame that looked more composed than tense, his neatly pressed button-down shirt and khakis a sharp contrast to the heat that threatened to bend everyone else. A press badge from the Sentinel, a rising independent black news outlet, hung from his neck. His recorder was clipped to his belt. A pen rested between his fingers, poised like a man who had already processed the world around him. Malik's gaze never wavered from Forsyth. His brown eyes, calm and calculating, watched the senator with a steady intensity, as though he were dissecting every word, every movement, before they were even uttered. There was a quiet energy around Malik, an undercurrent of something others felt but didn't understand. He didn't need to shift forward, to demand attention. He simply waited, like a hawk poised to strike. The murmurs of the crowd didn't affect him. He wasn't in a rush. He didn't flinch when he saw Forsyth's icy gaze flicker over him. It was a look Malik had seen before, the dismissive glance of someone used to being untouchable. Forsyth was used to being the one in control, the one who called the shots, who dictated the questions that were worth answering and the ones that weren't. But he had made a dangerous assumption. He had underestimated Malik Carter. The press conference began with the usual rehearsed rhetoric. Forsyth spoke of progress, of policies designed to help the American family, of fiscal responsibility and leadership that put people first. A small group of staffers planted at the front cheered on his every word. Forsyth basked in the applause, his smile wide, though his eyes were always scanning the crowd. And then, after a few safe questions, Malik raised his hand. There was a shift in the air. A quiet ripple passed through the crowd. The cameras turned. The reporters paused their note-taking. No one dared to speak out of turn, but all eyes turned toward Malik. He didn't stand out in the way a person might expect. He didn't push forward or make demands. He simply raised his hand, and the rest of the world seemed to hold its breath. A flicker of irritation crossed Senator Forsyth's face when he spotted Malik's raised hand. For a moment, he pretended not to notice, fielding a question from a network reporter instead, one of the usual safe bets. Malik didn't lower his hand. He stayed perfectly still, like a stone in a raging river. Finally, Forsyth could ignore him no longer. The cameras had caught it. The eyes of the crowd had caught it. Acknowledging Malik wasn't a choice. It was necessary. "You there?" Forsyth said. flashing a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. He pointed at Malik like a teacher calling on the troublemaker in the back of the classroom. The activist blogger. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter ran through the crowd. Some of the older journalists chuckled politely, eager to stay in Forsyth's good graces. Others, the ones who recognized Malik from the Sentinel and his hard-hitting series on political corruption, simply exchanged uneasy glances. Malik didn't flinch. He didn't lower his hand. He didn't correct Forsyth. He didn't flash a forced smile. He simply tucked the pen between his fingers neatly into the folder he had been carrying. In one smooth motion, Malik opened the folder. Inside were not notes, nor pre-written questions. Inside was a collection of documents, official reports, sworn affidavits, financial records, and photos, meticulously organized and neatly annotated. The moment the folder opened, it felt like a thundercloud had passed over Liberty Plaza. The buzz of cicadas grew louder in the heat. Forsyth's aides, perched like vultures at the edges of the podium, shifted nervously. Malik's voice was low but clear when he spoke. "Senator Forsyth," he said, addressing the man with a calm professionalism that made the senator's earlier jab seem childish. "In your 2022 campaign disclosures, there's a series of donations from a PAC called Liberty Forward. Liberty Forward, as you know, is funded almost entirely by Solace Corporation." Forsyth's smile froze. His mouth twitched slightly at the edges. The crowd leaned in. Malik continued, flipping a page. "Solace Corporation, in turn, has been under investigation for illegal dumping of toxic waste along the East River. Several communities, mostly Black and Latino neighborhoods, have reported severe health impacts, birth defects, and increased cancer rates. Your campaign accepted over $750,000 from them across 2 election cycles." The microphones picked up every syllable, every breath, every beat of silence afterward. Forsyth chuckled, trying to wave it off. "Conspiracy theories are fun in the summer heat," he said, shooting a glance at the sympathetic anchors in the crowd. "I'm sure you'll be selling t-shirts about it next." Malik didn't smile. He didn't look away. He turned another page. "I also have court records," Malik said, his voice steady, showing that after accepting these donations, your office redirected state cleanup contracts, worth millions, back to companies affiliated with Solace, none of which have completed their environmental safety requirements. Forsyth's hands gripped the edges of the podium just slightly tighter. A small movement, but Malik caught it. The cameras caught it. "You've been promising to clean up the system, Senator," Malik said, "but it seems you were mostly cleaning up for your donors." The crowd was deathly still now. Reporters who had planned to toss softball questions about infrastructure and tax breaks now scrambled in their notepads. A few staffers whispered urgently behind Forsyth, one slipping away toward the side exit. The senator's smile faltered into a tight line. Still, Malik pressed forward, calm, professional, unshaken. "My question, Senator Forsyth, is simple," Malik said. "Will you be returning the donations from Solace Corporation, given what's now public record?" Forsyth's jaw clenched visibly. For a fleeting second, rage flashed across his features. The naked, unfiltered anger of a man who wasn't used to being cornered in public. But Malik didn't react. He didn't savor the moment. He didn't even blink. He just waited, pen in hand, folder open, recording the silence like it was part of the answer. Forsyth cleared his throat, fumbling for a bottle of water one of his aides handed him. He bought himself a few seconds, letting the cool liquid run down his throat as he scrambled internally for a way out. "We'll review all contributions," Forsyth finally said, his voice strained. "If any improprieties are discovered, appropriate actions will be taken." It was a non-answer, a hollow deflection. But today, it didn't land the way it normally would. Today, the narrative wasn't his to control. Malik closed the folder with a soft, deliberate snap. And the plaza, still boiling under the merciless sun, held its breath, because everyone knew something had shifted. The veneer had cracked. The performance was over. The tension in Liberty Plaza hung heavy, thick enough to taste. Forsyth tried to move on, calling for another question, but the room, the world, had shifted. Every reporter's focus had snapped toward Malik like metal to a magnet. Malik didn't wait for permission. He flipped his folder open again, smooth and methodical, like he was unfolding a map straight to Forsyth's burial site. "One more thing, Senator," Malik said, his voice low but carrying through the heavy air. "While we're discussing campaign contributions and influence, it might be worth addressing your personal real estate holdings." Forsyth's knuckles whitened on the podium. "I have here," Malik continued, holding up a neatly clipped packet of documents, a series of property records tied to a shell company called Green Pastures Development LLC. He paused, letting the name sink in. Some reporters already had their phones out, typing furiously. Forsyth's aides exchanged frantic glances. "Green Pastures," Malik said, "was incorporated 2 years ago by one of your former staffers, acting as a proxy. Since then, it has quietly acquired foreclosed homes in predominantly black neighborhoods, specifically in districts affected by the environmental damage from Solace Corporation's activities." Forsyth opened his mouth to object, but Malik pressed on, his tone calm and relentless. "The properties were bought at pennies on the dollar, often through aggressive eviction tactics. Records show Green Pastures was granted expedited foreclosures in counties where your office applied political pressure to speed up urban redevelopment." He tapped the packet lightly. "I have affidavits from families who were pushed out, some of whom had no prior record of missed payments until clerical errors and code violations conveniently appeared." The plaza went silent. The cicadas, even the traffic nearby, seemed to dim. In the front row, a veteran journalist from the Baltimore Chronicle lowered his sunglasses slowly, staring up at Forsyth with fresh, predatory interest. Forsyth stammered, blinking rapidly. That's categorically false," he said, his voice rising slightly, the edges fraying. Malik raised an eyebrow, the slightest twitch of amusement at the senator's unraveling composure. "Then you won't mind if I share these findings with the Public Records Board?" Malik asked. His words were like velvet, smooth, deadly. Forsyth looked out over the crowd, perhaps searching for friendly faces, but there were none. The press, sensing blood in the water, turned fully on him. Questions began to fly. "Senator, did you knowingly profit off communities displaced by toxic waste? Is it true your office fast-tracked evictions tied to your personal investments? Were you aware your staffers were creating shell companies to hide your financial interests?" Flashes from cameras popped wildly. The shouting built into a frenzy. For the first time in his long political career, Forsyth looked genuinely cornered. He straightened his tie, trying to regain control, but his voice betrayed him. Thin, cracked. "These are baseless accusations," he said. "I have no personal involvement with any Green Pastures entity. I stand by my record of public service." Malik stood there silently, watching, not gloating, not triumphant, just present, unshakable. He knew this moment wasn't about scoring points. It was about exposure, about pulling down the curtain so the people could see the machine behind it. Without another word, Malik reached into his folder and pulled out a small black USB drive, holding it up between 2 fingers. "Electronic communications between your office and the principal agents of Green Pastures," Malik said plainly. "Emails, memos, internal strategy documents." He set it down carefully on the press stand in front of him, like a final nail in a coffin. Another wave of flashbulbs. Another round of gasps. Senator Forsyth tried to speak, but no words came. He shook his head once, muttered something unintelligible, and turned sharply from the podium, storming toward the exit with his aides scrambling after him like panicked ducklings. It was over. The spell was broken. And Malik? He didn't chase him. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The truth was already in motion, and it would run faster, louder, and farther than anything Forsyth could stop now. Reporters flooded Malik immediately, microphones and recorders thrust toward him. He raised a hand gently, signaling for quiet. "I'll release all documents for public review within the hour," Malik said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who belonged at the center of the storm. "This isn't about me. It's about accountability. It's about who we let lead us, and who they think they can step on to get there. And with that, Malik closed his folder, tucked it under his arm, and walked away from the podium, leaving the plaza behind him crackling with electricity, gossip, outrage, and, finally, hope. The summer heat bore down heavier than ever, but Malik felt lighter than he had in years. This was just the beginning. The press conference was over, technically, but Liberty Plaza had morphed into something closer to a battlefield. Malik stood a few yards back, calm amidst the chaos, watching the media swirl like sharks who just tasted first blood. His work wasn't finished yet. He reached into his pocket and tapped a small button on his phone. A crisp, unmistakable ping echoed from the speakers still set up around the plaza. Every reporter turned instinctively toward the sound. A new audio file began to play. First, a soft click of a recorder starting. Then, a familiar, blustering voice. "Forsyth, you think I care about these people?" Forsyth's voice sneered, thick with contempt. Half of them wouldn't know an opportunity if it slapped them across the face. You hand them clean water and they still whine. You clean up their neighborhoods, and all they do is drag it back into the dirt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The senator's tone grew even uglier. "They're useful when you need a photo op," Forsyth chuckled on the recording. "A few brown faces in the background makes you look compassionate enough for the donors. Then you move on. You don't waste resources on losers." The words hung in the air, radioactive. For a full 3 seconds, no one moved. Then the plaza exploded. Reporters shouted over each other. Cameramen scrambled to catch every reaction. One of Forsyth's senior aides, a tall woman in a sharp blue blazer, turned visibly pale at the sound of her boss's voice. She tried to hustle other staffers off the stage, but not before a young intern near the edge of the podium began sobbing, covering her face with both hands. Across the square, another aide, a middle-aged man with a graying beard, simply took off his earpiece, dropped it on the concrete, and walked away without a word. The collapse was happening live, in front of the cameras. Malik said nothing. He didn't have to. Every second the audio played, Forsyth's carefully crafted public image, the benevolent moderate, the voice for all, burned to ashes. A new voice, one of the reporters from the Daily Bulletin, called out over the din. "Mr. Henderson, is there more?" Malik met his gaze calmly. "There's always more," he said simply. Another ping. Another recording. This time, it was Forsyth again, speaking in a confidential strategy meeting. "If we can't gentrify the neighborhoods fast enough," he said, "we let the decay continue until the only people left are too poor to fight back. Then we buy cheap, rebuild, and fill it with voters we can count on. It's basic math. Politics isn't about saving people, it's about managing them." Screams. Shouts. The press practically stampeded. Forsyth's communications director tried desperately to hold a press gaggle at the side of the stage. "No comment at this time, no comment." But the reporters weren't even pretending to listen anymore. On every live news feed streaming from Liberty Plaza, the headlines rolled fast and brutal. Senator Forsyth caught in racist rant, staffers resign mid-conference, Forsyth's empire crumbles as scandal deepens, audio confirms, eviction scheme tied to systemic racism, gentrification plan. Somewhere inside the building behind the plaza, Forsyth himself was probably watching this implosion unfold. Unable to stop it, unable even to spin it. And Malik? Malik stood quietly in the shade of an old oak tree, arms crossed loosely, his phone back in his pocket. His heart wasn't filled with victory. It was filled with something colder, heavier, purpose. This wasn't just a takedown. This was a reckoning. One man's fall was a warning shot for all the others who thought they could buy power at the cost of black lives, black homes, black futures. The system wouldn't change overnight. Malik knew that. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like the armor was cracking. The truth had claws. And today, it was tearing its way out into the light. The fall came faster than anyone could have predicted. Within 48 hours, Senator Robert Forsyth was a political pariah. Headlines blared across every major network. Forsyth under federal investigation for housing discrimination and corruption. Calls for resignation mount after explosive audio leak. Senator Forsyth, from rising star to disgraced politician in 72 hours. Investigators swarmed his offices. Civil rights groups filed lawsuits. Former allies distanced themselves with carefully worded statements dripping with false shock. Somewhere, Malik thought, Forsyth was probably still telling himself it was all a misunderstanding, that he could weather it, spin it. But Malik knew better. The truth had weight. And once it broke loose, there was no putting it back in the cage. The Sentinel's newsroom buzzed when Malik walked in, but no one swarmed him or clapped him on the back. That wasn't the culture here, and Malik was grateful for it. He slid into his desk, still cluttered with old case notes and draft articles, and quietly opened a new document. No victory lap. No chest-thumping op-eds. He wasn't the story. He never was. The real fight, the long, grinding, often invisible fight, wasn't over. Behind Forsyth stood dozens more just like him. Hidden in city councils, school boards, real estate firms, corporate foundations, people who thought they could squeeze life from communities like his and never be held accountable. Malik stared at the blank page for a moment, breathing deeply. He thought about his mother, who lost her first home to a predatory loan. He thought about his neighbors, who scraped and saved and still got pushed out when developers moved in. He thought about all the families he hadn't been able to help yet. The weight was heavy, but he welcomed it. Slowly, Malik began to type. When the foundations rot, even the most gilded buildings will fall. And when they fall, the people will build something better from the rubble. In the corner of his eye, he caught a few co-workers looking his way, not with awe, but with a kind of quiet respect. The kind reserved for someone who remembered why he started in the first place. Malik smiled to himself, small and real. There would be other battles. Other nights where he questioned if the truth even mattered anymore. Other mornings where cynicism tried to creep in. But today was proof. The truth still had power. And as long as it did, Malik Henderson would be there, pen in hand, ready to swing it like a sword. He saved the file and leaned back for just a moment, letting the weight settle. Then he got back to work.